Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 40 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Keep Going. Our quote of the day comes to us from Winston Churchill. If you're going through hell, keep going. Today marks day 8 of the 21-day No Quit Living Challenge. We welcome you to participate in this challenge where we invite you to think big and identify your one goal that you want to accomplish over these next 21 days. Please head over to our No Quit Living Facebook page for all the details and our daily videos. You can find us at facebook.com/noquitliving. We hope to see you there. It is my pleasure to bring you today's episode. Our guest is a young gentleman that is committed to both making a difference and helping others. In today's podcast, he shares his personal life lessons and explains the importance of having a vision. I would like to introduce Seth Campbell. Seth, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me on here, Chris. I appreciate it, man. Glad to be with you.
I appreciate the honors ours. So the first question is a pretty easy one, is are you ready to make it happen today?
Always, man. Always. Try to stay ready, you know?
I knew you'd say that, and it's always good to be ready. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners. So I was curious if you had possibly a personal story about perseverance or maybe a challenging time that tested you, but you kept on going and never quit.
You know what I do, man? I actually had the opportunity to share this story just a few weeks ago at a convention that I was speaking at. But it's funny, but I think sometimes the things that you read, the things that you learn from people that have gone before you can show up later in your life and really prove to be invaluable. For me, I was given a book, which I'm assuming most of your listeners have probably heard of, hopefully have read. I'm sure you've read it, but Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Great book.
And a great book, excellent book. And I read it. They talk about the whole 3 feet from gold and all that stuff. Your greatest success comes just a few steps beyond the point at which defeat has overtaken you. And it sounds good. It feels good. You hear it, and you get all the warm fuzzies inside. Yeah, that's not. It doesn't really prepare you for the difficulty that you're going to face as an entrepreneur. But for me, when I first started my business, I remember having some I'll say moderate success somewhat early on within my first year. Not smashing success, not to the level that I could, walk away and be retired or anything like that. But I was doing okay. I started at 24, and about a year and a half, 2 years into it, I had the most difficult time of my life. I had an entire period of time, a little over a month actually, where suddenly that whole reap what you sow thing didn't seem to be working because I had zero results. I had no results from the work I was putting in. I got to this point where I was working harder than I had ever worked. I had more activity than I had ever had. I had more people that I was working with than I had ever had in my life, and it converted to nothing. As a matter of fact, my income went down that particular month. Everything just went backwards. It kind of, people out there that have experienced that feeling where everything caves in, that was where I was at. Everything just kind of fell apart all in 1 month. Everything I had built over 16, 17 month period, suddenly in 30 days, it caved in. It fell apart. And I remember having all of the naysayers and the doubters and the well-intentioned friends who warned me, not to go into the industry I had gone into. They were all right in that moment. They were right. It doesn't work. It's not going to last. It's going to come crashing down. Like all of those thoughts and the feelings and the fears and all that stuff. And I remember that month really, really well. I remember it was probably up to that point in my life the darkest, most difficult place I'd ever been in. And for whatever reason, I remember thinking about that book, and it's kind of funny, but I almost emotionally, I didn't believe it. I just remember thinking, okay, well, Napoleon Hill says, your greatest success will come one step beyond the point at which defeat has completely overtaken you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, emotionally, you don't believe it. You're like, well, I don't feel it. You still feel defeated, but this little part of your brain's like, just give it a shot. Just keep going. Just take a few more steps. And so anyways, the next month comes around and it's a month-to-month business. And so the next month starts, and this was actually March of 2010. And I get up and I go back to work. I just kind of force myself to work as if everything's fine. And that particular month, a few small things happened that ended up becoming big things. And just to make a long story really short for you, I met a few people that next month, that people that I wouldn't have met had I quit. And I really wanted to quit, by the way. Anyone that ever tells you they've never thought of quitting, they've got to be lying, because I think everybody has the thoughts. They pop into our heads. But that next month, I guess I just wanted to test the theory. Is Napoleon right? Is this true? And so I kept pushing, and I met a few people, and I meet a lot of people in my business. They didn't seem that different. They didn't seem that extraordinary at the time. But over the course of the next 60 days, and then 90 days, and then 120 days, things started to skyrocket for me. I was able, over the course of just the next couple of months, to get to a six-figure income for the first time in my life. I was 25 at this time, and was just barely getting by financially. And all of a sudden, in the next just a couple of months, all of a sudden I have a six-figure income, and then the income doubles, and then it doubles again. And I found myself in a situation maybe just a little less than a year after that challenge, and it was a whirlwind. I mean, I was working hard. And I couldn't even keep up with the activity that was created by just a few people that I met. But about a year later, I'm in a situation where, I've had more success than I thought I was even going to have. I'm in a financial situation that I could have only ever dreamed of beforehand. I'm 26 years old now, and I'm making a higher amount of money in a month than what I had set out to make in a year. When I started my business, I just wanted to make a certain amount per year. Now I'm making that in a month, and things have just been incredible. And I remember thinking back to that month and thinking back to that whole, your greatest success is going to come just a couple of steps beyond the point at which defeat has completely overtaken you. And for me, it was just, the value of having read those words, because those words came to my mind during that difficult month. The value of having read those words and being educated on that principle, and then I guess just the willingness to test it out, just to go out and just let's see if it works. I think that every entrepreneur is going to have the low point. You have to. It's almost like a test. It's like it's something that you have to face. You're going to have a point at which defeat will overtake you. And I think the reason the personal development side of things is so important is because you have to expose yourself to the mentality, to the philosophy, to the ideas, because in those dark moments, that's the stuff that's going to sustain you. And then you got to be willing to go out and actually put it to the test. And so for me, that's the point that stands out. And by the way, I've had challenges since then too. It's not like everything has been peaches since then. I've always made great money since then. Financially, things have been awesome since then. For the last 7 years, I haven't had to worry about money. I'm completely unemployable, and always will be. But in my business, I've still had some serious challenges. And that experience now, it's different. I don't get filled with the same fears. I don't have the same thoughts. I don't think, it's not going to, now the quitting can't cross my mind, because now I just know when things get tough, I've proven the theory. When things get tough, if you're just a little bit, I'll just say this, if you're dumb enough to keep going when nothing's working, then stuff will start to work. And that's kind of what I've experienced in my life. So.
No, that's a great story, and I appreciate you saying that. And, it comes back to what we really preach at No Quit Living is, and I had a guest, Michael J. Mayer, who was on many, many weeks ago, and he said something that was interesting, is he said, in life and in business, it's perfectly okay to stop, to reassess where you are, and then to go ahead with it. But he was so adamant is there's a difference of stopping and reassessing where you are versus completely quitting. And I think to your point, and Think and Grow Rich is a great book, and I've recommended it to a ton of people, but your biggest success a lot of the times happens right after maybe your biggest defeat. It might be your biggest defeat ever, but you're only fully defeated if you ever truly stop and give up 100%. And I really appreciate you sharing that story with us, because it just talks about not only your character, but again, going back to your story about Think and Grow Rich is you got to just keep going. And that's kind of the whole thing we talk about here at No Quit Living is people may disappoint you, business opportunities might not come to fruition, but it's only when you quit or when someone quits on you have you really, really lost and accepted that defeat. So I'm glad you shared that with us. And thank you for again, recommending that book. That book's been mentioned many times on our program.
Yeah, incredible book.
We utilize a daily quote in each of our podcasts. And I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
Yeah, you know what? I have a lot. I tend to retain things I read pretty well. And so I've got a lot of quotes. And just the first one that popped into my head immediately when you bring that up is it happens to be from Napoleon Hill, although it's on a different topic. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. That's a quote that I've lived by, and I think as an entrepreneur, you have to adopt that philosophy. I believe that we're kind of conditioned by society to value everyone's opinion, and that's a terrible, terrible life philosophy. Some people will hear that and they'll immediately pull back. And like, well, what do you mean? Are you talking about being closed-minded? Of course you should value other people's opinions. And I love that quote. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth, because what it taught me was you cannot let an opinion and you can't let it into your mind. You can't let it affect you emotionally. You can't dwell on it, because my experience is this: most people tend to think like most people, meaning the average person thinks like the masses. That's why they're average. That's why they're part of the masses. And I honestly believe if you take every opinion you hear and you take it to heart, it will doom you to a life of being average, of mediocrity. I think you do have to get to the point where you're mentally bulletproof, where you have a couple of mentors, you have people that you look to as having achieved certain results, and you listen. When they speak, you listen. But everybody else, their opinions are just noise. And so that would be one that I've really shaped my life after. Is opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. I really believe they are.
I like that quote, and being mentally bulletproof. That's a strong one as well. As we all know, life is incredibly challenging, and it's filled each and every day with different obstacles. I was curious, what motivates you and keeps you going every single day?
For me, it's really comes down to vision. It comes down to my the picture. It's something that not a lot of people have. A lot of people don't put time into, and this comes from just the personal development side, from reading the words, from listening to the concepts and learning the principles that successful people govern themselves by. And one of the things that I've learned from mentors of mine and people that I've tried to follow and pattern my thinking after because of their results, one thing I've learned from them is that they have a lot of clarity on exactly what they're trying to achieve. They have definiteness of purpose. They have a very clear picture. And I know the reason I know most people don't have that is because my experience has been, and in my profession, I'm meeting with people constantly and having these conversations, kind of like what you and I are having now, where we're talking about success. We're talking about what they want in life. And when I ask most people what they want in life, what they give me is, I want to be out of debt. I want to be debt free. I want to be financially free. I want to have plenty of money. I want to be able to travel the world. It's about as specific as I'll ever get. And those are all good things, but it means nothing. It means nothing to your subconscious mind. It's not going to drive you. And I tell people, you need to be so specific. And this is the guideline when I'm working with a brand new aspiring entrepreneur, trying to help them kind of make that transition. I tell them, your picture, what it is you're trying to achieve, it needs to be so specific that an artist could paint it on a canvas. That's the kind of detail that I want from you. I want to know when I say, what do you want? Tell me what color your house is going to be. Tell me where it is. Is it beachfront? Is it in the mountains? Tell me that stuff. Tell me who you are. Tell me what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Who are you impacting? Like I want to be specific. And what I found is that when your picture is clear, when it's really specific, then it will drive you. It'll drive you on a day-to-day basis. The late great Jim Rohn once said, when the promise is clear, then the price is easy. When people have a hard time paying the price, it's because they don't have a clear promise. They don't know what's on the other end of the journey. So it makes it all of a sudden now it's hard to get up and make the phone call or go out and hustle and do what you got to do. You have excuses start to creep in. But if you can get clear on your picture, then there's a different level of energy you can bring to the day-to-day stuff. And so for me, it's my vision. It's my picture that a lot of people might look at and think is completely unrealistic. To me, it's real. And that's what drives me every day. I think you have to have a very, very, very specific, clear vision of what you're going to do, what you're going to accomplish.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things we talk about often at No Quit Living is accountability and goals. And when it comes to goals, and to use your point, is I want to get out of debt, or I want to be financially be abundant. I want to not worry about bills and things. That's a great goal, but you need to be specific with it. So one of the things we talk about, for example, is if somebody's a salesperson and they made $100,000 last year, and you sit down with them to start a new year and say, well, what do you want to do? And you say, well, I want to make more than last year. So then you say to them, okay, so if you made $100,010, would you be happy? And if they say, of course not. So you take it to a next level and say, okay, then what is it you're aiming for? Is it 110 this year, or 120, or 125? But I think to your point is you have to have a very specific goal, but you also have to have a very specific vision. And I like your analogy about being able to paint a picture down to the color of the fence or the trees in the yard. And I think if you do have that specific vision, the chance and the likelihood of you accomplishing those goals probably increases by a factor of 10. One of the things we're always looking to do is provide value for our listeners. I was curious if you have a morning or daily ritual that you feel has led to or helped some of your success.
Yeah. There's a few things that I did, not really knowing what I was doing in the beginning. I did it because I liked the way it made me feel. And so I kept doing it. And it ended up becoming an invaluable thing, an invaluable part of my process as I've grown as an entrepreneur. But I think that every single entrepreneur, you have to have some mentors. You have to have some mentors. You have to have some people that you look to, that you listen to, that you try to, shape and model and pattern your behavior after. We like saying things like, I'm going to blaze my own trail. I follow no one, blah, blah, blah. Those things all sound really good. It's not exactly a recipe for success. Like it's cool being unique and being yourself. Be yourself. But you're not going to go teach yourself how to become a multimillionaire when you've been broke your whole life. And that's something I knew early on, is I had to have some mentors. And so I remember very early on, just a couple weeks into my journey as an entrepreneur, somebody told me about an individual named Jim Rohn, who I've already mentioned in this interview. And I remember laying in my bed at night, put my headphones in, my laptop is on my stomach, and I'm just laying in my bed, and I just go to YouTube and I type in Jim Rohn, and I watch about a 10-minute video, and I'm like, I like this guy. So I watched another video, and all of a sudden I couldn't sleep. It's 2:00 in the morning, and my brain's on fire with all these new ideas and things like that. And so that became this thing I was excited to do. I want to watch some Jim Rohn videos, and I've picked a few mentors. Now I've got personal mentors. I have people in my life that have been personal mentors to me that I've been able to pick up the phone and work with and things like that. And that's why one of my passions is doing the same thing with others, working with people that are making that transition to be an entrepreneur. But I think you also need to have some, I'll call them distant mentors, a mentor that maybe you can't reach out and touch. Maybe you can't call him. I never met Jim Rohn. He's since passed away. He's still a mentor of mine, T. Harv Eker. And I could throw out a laundry list of names, Grant Cardone, whoever it is that you resonate with, but grab a mentor and spend time with them every single day. And so a daily ritual for me is you got to hear their voice every day. Have a mentor or 2 or 3 or 4, somebody who's gone where you want to go. Hear their voice every day. Spend time with them every day. And the great thing about technology is you can do that really, really easily. If you're somebody out there that says, you know what, I really like Tony Robbins. I like the way he thinks. Fortunately, you can there are probably thousands of hours of audio and video out there that you can go access, a lot of it for free. And so go spend time with that mentor every day, because what I found is that if you become like who you hang around, right? You become the combined average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. What happens is you're going to start to think like the people you listen to the most. And I don't think your brain knows the difference between someone sitting next to you and someone speaking to you through YouTube or through a podcast or something like that. Your mind's going to assimilate the ideas. It's going to hear their voice just the same. And so if you spend enough time listening to somebody teach, you will eventually start to think like them. And so that's a daily ritual, is pick a couple of mentors and hear their voice every single solitary day. Spend some time every day. When you're in your car, listen to them. Before you go to bed at night, maybe when you first wake up, find some time. Find 10 minutes, find 20 minutes, find 30 minutes, and make sure you're ingesting those ideas and starting to pattern your mind to think a certain way. I think that's really the key to getting their results. If you think like somebody, you're going to behave like that person. And if you behave like them, then you're going to achieve like them. And so that's a huge daily ritual for me. That's helped me a ton.
No, that's a great piece of advice and some awesome insight. And that's something that we talk about quite often, is looking for different people. And to your point, it doesn't have to be someone that's still alive, and it doesn't have to be someone that you physically speak to or meet in person. There's so many ways. And as you mentioned, in today's day and age of technology, it's so easy. And as you mentioned, there's a ton of free content out there, whether it's podcasts, videos. So I definitely recommend our listeners to take you up on that and try out some different people. The one thing is with technology is, unlike paying a coach or paying a doctor or somebody to sit with you, you can't just kind of get up and leave. But when it comes to some of the technology, if you're listening to somebody that maybe you don't think it's a real good fit, you just turn it off and turn someone else on. So I think that's awesome as well. So here's a different question for you. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That's a great question. Anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why? Now, obviously, my mind immediately goes to, as an entrepreneur, so I'm thinking of the entrepreneurs out there, the people that because there's obviously different areas of life, different areas of life. Some people, it might be a spiritual answer. They might have something, maybe a faith-based mentor they'd want to go to, a business mentor, a relationship mentor, something like that. So for me, I'm going to go with the entrepreneur route on this one. But if I could have dinner with anybody dead or alive, man, this is the only question you've asked where I don't have an immediate answer, because I've got several. I'm going to go ahead and do I have your permission to give you two? Can I do that? Can I give you two?
100% authority. Give me 1, 2, or 3, whatever floats your boat.
All right. I'm going to give you one dead and one living. Living right now, I would sit, if I had an opportunity to sit down and have dinner with somebody just one-on-one, it'd probably be Tony Robbins. And I say that just because of his ability to help people kind of get inside their own head and rewire their thinking. I'm a huge believer in two things. Number one, that we've all been programmed and conditioned to some level by society, by culture, things like that. Number two, that most of our programming is not for our benefit. Most of our programming comes from a society that is massively average. And so his ability to kind of help you find the things that need to be reprogrammed and then reprogram them, just the way he understands the human mind is just fascinating to me. And so living, I would sit down with Tony Robbins. I'd have dinner with Tony. I think that'd be a neat experience. Not living, I would say Napoleon Hill. He's, not only the book Think and Grow Rich, but if you haven't read Outwitting the Devil and you're listening to this, I highly recommend that as well. Excellent book. But I think his understanding of success, of the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people, and the way that his mind worked as well, that'd be the other person's. If I could sit down and have dinner with Napoleon Hill, I think that'd be a pretty neat experience.
If we could set up dinner with either of those two, I think it would be a remarkable dinner, and I think you'd learn a lot. So before we let you go, Seth, I just wanted to ask if you have any parting words for our listeners.
You know what? The first thing that pops into my mind, Chris, is if your listeners are obviously they're entrepreneurs, or they would like to become entrepreneurs, or trying to achieve something that's out of the ordinary. The reason I say that is because they're listening to a podcast right now rather than listening to music. They're educating rather than entertaining. And so that right there tells me that they're not part of the 98%. They're part of the 2%. So what I would say to those people is whatever it is that you're doing, whatever your craft is, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, if you're listening to this podcast, a lot of you are probably starting or have started your own business. It might be a brick and mortar business. It might be some kind of a home-based business, an online business, network marketing business, something like that. But there's something that you've found that you're going to do. My advice is this. If you want to separate yourself again, even among the entrepreneurs, if you want to go to the next level and become excellent even among your peers, you need to practice immersion. You need to, whatever it is that you're going to do, full immersion. You need to let it become a part of who you are. That's one of the biggest differences I've noticed between successful people and I'll say average people. People that achieve average results, people that achieve, greatly, is this, the highest achievers, whatever it is that they're doing, it's immersion. It's what they do. They don't dabble in it. They don't pick and choose when they're going to be active in it, but they're fully immersed. I'll give you an example. Network marketing it's a great profession you can look at for examples. In the network marketing profession, most people, they participate in building their network marketing business when it's really convenient for them. They go to events when they can financially afford to get to the event, and they might be even 80% in. They're still dabbling. The highest achievers are people that from day one, this is what I'm doing. They don't ever miss events, ever. They don't miss a phone call. They don't miss a meeting. They don't miss an opportunity to grow. They don't miss an opportunity to be active and to be engaged. And they practice this principle of full immersion, and that sets them apart. So whatever it is that you're doing, I understand you might have a job. You might not be able to, oh gosh, I can't go full time. I'm not saying go full time, but mentally and emotionally immerse yourself in whatever it is that you're doing. Master it. Don't dabble in it. Don't play with it. Don't go in and out in it. Jump in completely and become a master at your trade, and you will out-earn everybody around you. So that would be my, parting words of advice.
No, that's great advice, and that's one of the things we talk about also is the action. And when you immerse yourself in something, you take action, and you don't dabble in it, you don't do it half-assed, you do it fully. So I truly appreciate you sharing that. And the last question, I promise it's an easy one. What's the best way for our listeners to either connect with you or follow you?
The best way would be probably through Facebook. Right, I've got a Facebook page. His name is Seth Campbell. So I think the page is facebook.com/the Seth Campbell, just because Seth Campbell was taken. Apparently there's another Seth Campbell out there. I haven't met him yet, but somewhere out there. So facebook.com/the the Seth Campbell. Just on Facebook, I'm really, really responsive there. People send me messages all the time, and I usually respond at least within the same day. And so it's a great way to connect. If you've got questions, I love chatting with people. I love hearing people's success stories. I love hearing where people want to go and just kind of getting to connect and engage with other entrepreneurs or people that want to become entrepreneurs. So Facebook, Seth Campbell would be a great way to connect.
Well, Seth, I truly, truly appreciate not only your time, but your insight as well. And I look forward to definitely connecting with you. And I truly appreciate you sharing what you shared. And hopefully our listeners will connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Chris. I appreciate it, man.
To sum up today's episode in our theme of the day, keep going. That's exactly what Seth did. After 2.5 years into his business, when Seth saw little to no results, he kept on going. When everything was leaning towards him quitting, he remembered one specific piece of advice that really helped him to continue. He mentioned how the greatest success often comes just a few feet after failure. In his parting words, Seth discussed the importance of having a clear and definitive vision. He explained the true value of having such a specific vision and focus to lead you towards your success. The last thing he shared I thought was great. He discussed taking action and the need to fully immerse yourself into whatever it is you want to accomplish. He was very specific in that, and how full immersion is very different than dabbling in something. So our call to action today follows that same path of vision. What is it that you truly want to do, attempt, or accomplish? Not something of interest or something you think you might want to try, but what is it that you are 100% committed to? Whatever that one thing is, attack it with laser-like focus, take action, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.